Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another Mocha Money Monday. I'm your host, Ashley Scott, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing none other than Curtis Drafton. Now, I'm excited to let this gentleman introduce himself because he has a long history as a retired military man. You know, we love the vets here. And he's also a chaplain, and he's doing great work when it comes to financial literacy in our community. And you know, here we're all about investing in the community. And Mocha Money Monday, we're going to talk about how we can become more aware of strategies that can help us to really grow the bag, because that's what it's all about, right? Not just the bag, but the inner wealth that you can find when you have a good financial background or financial literacy and financial strategies. So good morning, Mr. Drafton. How are you today?
Good morning, all is well, blessed and blessing others.
Good. So tell the people just a little bit more about you, your background, and how you got involved in helping our community with these financial literacy strategies.
Sure. So I am actually a 6-year Army veteran. One of those years was spent in emergency healing, aka TDRL, aka injured reserve. So my injuries forced me out of the military. And from there, I ended up actually being homeless because my fiance at the time had stage 4 acute lymphatic cancer. She later passed away, and I was stuck with over six figures, a good six figures in medical bills from her treatments, chemotherapy down the line, trial studies. And what I promised to God is that if He brought me out as He's brought me out before, that I would make sure not another veteran or active duty went through that ever again. And thus I founded the Hall of Fame. And to date, we are helping, as in the area of financial literacy, veterans in areas where their lives can be better.
Awesome. So this vision that God gave you for the Veterans Hall of Fame, can you tell us a little bit more about the mission and what you're doing and how you actually your projects and the things you do in the community?
Yeah. So what we actually do is, so you've probably heard of the Marine Corps slogan, duty, honor, country. Well, we added to that appreciation, right? Because after the duty to your country and people saying that they honor veterans, well, how do you do that? Sometimes it looks like helping you keep the lights on. Sometimes it helps you look like making sure you have the career or the educational path that you need so that you and your family can have a successful route and navigate this life. And so what we do is we link up with corporate partners, community advocates, and we make sure that every veteran gets to explore the plan they had for their lives. We don't come with a cookie cutter pre that we understand. Oh, did I freeze? Okay, I thought I froze there for a minute, but
Yeah, you're here.
we don't. Yeah, we don't come with a cookie cutter plan that says your life has to go this way. No, when you were 17 or 18 years old, you already had in your mind map the way and the direction that you wanted your life to go. So you explain that to us. We bring the resources and the persons who can help you build out that plan, at least the foundation of it to where you can take off. And from there, we get you on the path that you need for 100% success in your life.
Hmm. I love this. Now, I want to go a little deeper with you. You were very transparent about your stint with some homelessness. How often are you finding, in your experience when you're engaging with veterans, that they are also experiencing the same homelessness? And how do you connect them? What resources are out there to help people? And when we're even thinking about, our veterans, what are some things that we should keep in mind?
Well, the one thing, that's a really good question, and it has so many rabbit holes you can go down. But the one thing is that a lot of, let's say, the civilian side, the non veteran side of America, they assume that a veteran, once they're out of the military, can walk into the VA, the Veterans Administration, and that there's this magical pot of money and resources that as long as you walk in the door, your life is good. Well, that is
Right.
not the case. It's definitely not the case. And so, what we found in our research, myself and retired Colonel Frederick Dubois, is that going through probably 30 years history with the VA, is that for one, and this is a public fact, only 40% of veterans even have a claim through the VA. And so, out of 18 million living veterans today, that would mean that somewhere around the number 7, maybe 6 million of them are even in the VA system. Where are the rest of them? They do not trust the system. and or the system has actually dropped the ball and let them down. So when they came out of the military, they find themselves in the predicament of homelessness, unemployment, completely unattached to society, and they've got to figure it out themselves. And that's something that I can relate to. You fly back from Iraq or Afghanistan, such as I did, and you walk through that airport out off the tarmac, and there's balloons and there's cameras and there's the USO and they're singing and they give you a gift bag and oh man, you're great. But what they don't realize is that we are human too. And the very next morning, if you have a spouse or children, or even if it's upon yourself to look at yourself and say, now we got these things called bills. When we were in the military, they paid for everything, food, clothing, shelter. You didn't have a care in the world. Everything that came into your pocket stayed in your pocket for the most part, unless you went out on some kind of leave and wasted your finances. That money's waiting on you when you get out the military. But nonetheless, fast forward, the average military career is only 3 to 4 years. So when you come out of the military, what the VA gives you is a percentage of what you last made at your military rank. That's what you get monthly. So for instance, I was only a specialist. A specialist is below an officer. It's like the last rung on the ladder before you finally make an E5, which is a sergeant. And so for me, while in the military, and I've been out for 8 years now, I was only making $1,400. That's all I made. And it was a 5-year fight that until the beginning of this year, I did not get 100%. So at my pay grade coming out for the past 5.5 years, I was basically getting from the VA only $700.
Wow.
And so, where my body was bruised, where my mind was set back, and where the literacy portion of what the VA was supposed to teach me about how to handle your money when you get out of here, for that part, I became homeless very fast, very fast. She passed away 9 August of 2012. And so from 9 August all the way up until the spring of 2013, I was out on the streets trying to figure this whole thing out, and I walked into the VA, walked into the VFW, and there were no resources for me. And at the time, there was not a built out DoD Skill Bridge program, which is the program that teaches you in a small degree how to transition from military to civilian. So we need to bring these resources in to teach these veterans that there are ways. And unfortunately, it's going to be through the private sector that we do find the success to help the 100,000 currently homeless veterans in America, and then the 1.6 million veterans that are looking for adequate employment to take care of their families.
This is a lot of information and it's an opportunity, right? Because our veterans obviously need homes. Housing is something that we're really focusing on when we talk about a lot of things in our episodes here at Mocha Money Monday. It's usually around community development, real estate development, and our veterans need affordable housing and homes. So I'm curious to know some of the resources that you found out here that might help not just veterans that might need housing, but people who are interested in serving veterans, doing the kind of work that you're doing, helping them with financial literacy. How do we begin to do exactly what you said, become the private sector that's serving and supporting our veterans when they're being left behind in this way?
Well, I think it's advocacy. Advocacy is always the main thing. It's what they say in corporate America. And let me back up just a little bit. So I know a little bit about corporate America from several aspects. One, I was the #1 lead executive director over at Infinity Spas, which is now the #2. It used to be #1 hot tub selling corporation in America. And then outside of that, I was actually the marketing director for the current Jersey Mike's subs. So, but looking at that, I'm one out of an average of somewhere around 5,000 veterans who actually ascertains a good career. The other 4,999, they're only getting $10 to $15 an hour in a climate, with inflation, to whereas with that kind of pay, you're only going to get somewhere in the range of a $700 to $800 a month apartment. You're not going to qualify for a home, right? And so what we need is people who have access to those resources and to those networks to go and advocate to the corporations and to the politicians in your local area and to say, hey, wait a minute now, we don't have any of this. without our veteran sacrifice, whether or not they paid the ultimate sacrifice or whether they came home wounded, injured, PTSD stricken, all those things. We need somebody to go in front of the big dogs, as we call them in the military, the big dogs, the top dogs, and say, hey, wait a minute, we're leaving people behind. And if I can be a little bit more transparent to culture, our culture being, for me, it's African American as well as Cuban. And so we never leave anybody behind. We don't do that. And so we want to bring that mindset to in front of a country, put a spotlight on it to whereas this country does say, oh, we care about everybody. And so for me and the vision that God gave me, I have nothing to lose by going in front of these people saying, hey, in very lay terms, either put up or shut up, because veterans are used as a slogan or a hashtag 24/7. We love the vets. Vets need more. Vets, 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 vets. None of that barely ever translates into resources, be it dollar, in kind, shelter, you name it, or resources like education. It doesn't fully transfer. And so I don't mind. And just a couple of months ago, I was on Capitol Hill and got a chance to actually raise my voice in front of some legislators and let them know we need more. Now, has that matriculated down? Not quite yet, but that's what we are willing to do. And we ask that others join that battle and going in front of them and saying, hey, it's not that we're asking for anything extra. This is what the country's foundation, says they're built upon, is helping everybody and letting everybody ascertain the American dream, which to most degree, even in your financial world, the middle class and the American dream is somewhat dead. Well, but we can revive it as long as we keep the spotlight on politicians to force change. I think that's the way forward, and that's what we need is more advocates.
Okay, well, that's a fair, it's a reasonable ask to ask for people to stand up and advocate for vets, especially locally. A lot of us might not be able to go to Washington and speak in front of our senators, but we most certainly can go to our local communities, go to our city halls, councils, meetings, and different places where we can talk about the power of or the importance of empowering and creating programs that support our vets. So I appreciate that, Curtis. Now, let
Yeah,
me ask you, let's talk more about financial literacy, right?
yeah.
What are you guys doing around financial literacy? And what are some tips or tricks or things you think that our audience could take around or back to their people when it comes to financial literacy if they want to have a conversation with a vet or just get their own house in order? What would you tell them?
So, good question again. Let's start with the stats. So, the average American spends consumerism wise, and that's rent, that's car, that's insurance, that's groceries, that's everything that you buy day to day. The average person annually spends $72,000, right? And so, if I bring that number, because again, veterans were human, so we live the same kind of lives that everybody else lives. We got the same bills and responsibilities. And so, at $72,000, and right now there's roughly 18 million living veterans. Let's look at the overall spending power of what the veteran population brings. And this does apply to the non-veteran population as well. So at 72,000, let's just take half the number of veterans, 9 million veterans instead of 18, right? What is that? That's over $6 billion in spending power that if treated in the correct environment, meaning that everything was supplied at the base level, meaning they had access to housing, they had access to health, they didn't have to pay for things that, the promises from good old Uncle Sam said we wouldn't have to pay for. We're looking at $6.8 billion instantly into the kitty as far as what the government brings in, which brings down taxes. So, but the problem with that is, even if a veteran does get a high paying job, and for me, I know a high paying job, I was in a good six figures when I was with Jersey Mike's, or pretty close to the good six figures. So looking at that, there was never a transitional piece to where somebody came to me and said, hey, now that you're making this, let's look at money markets, let's look at stocks, let's look at investments. Nobody ever did that. Now, granted, for me, I knew those things. Who teaches that? And so what we do now is we have to look back and say, okay, again, I'm one out of 5,000 vets who had a good job. And I quit that job to help other veterans because this is my calling, this is my purpose God gave me. But we go to the banks and we go to the financial literatures and we ask you all, hey, why don't we just, and we don't need a broadband kind of broadcast, but why don't we just set up small community meetings where we really focus on, let's say, 20 to 40 vets at a time, and let's teach them the bare fundamentals. Yes, this is a bank account, but how is it being invested? Do you want to get involved in other things? Are you interested in real estate? Are you interested in being an entrepreneur? And so we've been in front of the truest banks in times past. We've been in front of Wells Fargo. We've been in front of Fifth Third. We've been in front of Citibank. We go to the experts. We've been in front of one or two members now of Edward Jones. And we ask these people, can you bring the literacy portion to these vets to let them know that even if they aren't making a high six figure, that they can properly invest the monies that they do have and create a successful brick pattern to lay out for generational wealth, which is a term we use in our community a lot. But how do we get there? A lot of people don't want to lean on the experts, but we do have to lean on the experts. This is what you all have studied for years, right? And all we want is an inside look on how that operates. And so what we do again is we reach out to those institutions I named before. We've also reached out to New York Life and Mass Mutual, and we've asked these guys, hey, why don't you just give us the all around picture? And so to that point, what we do is we actually very heavily vet the organizations we bring in front of our vets. Because here's the thing, a lot of people won't understand in corporate America, you've got one shot to impress the veteran community. If you mess that shot up, you are done for life. They never want to be bothered with you again, right? And it's not to say, oh, they're just being too picky. No, they know how to vet you, or as we say in the military, dress right dress, and say, wait a minute, something's off here. Why don't you go all the way away from us, fix that, and then approach somebody else? You can't come back to me, but work on yourself. It's okay, you messed up, right? But that's our pattern, and we don't only do that in finances. We do that in education as well, because there are a lot of people who, again, all they want as a business is the dollars that the veteran gets from the VA or whomever else, and they don't really care about the path. Now, the institutions we have, and that's why when people go on our website, they're like, there are very few organizations or corporations represented in those you trust. Yeah, because once we find out you're a snake, you gotta go. You gotta go. I mean, and if I could put on my chaplain cap for a minute, God said the exact same thing. He said that when a weed is growing up in a certain man's yard, and this is through deep research, when the weed is growing up in the yard, you don't just snip the weed, you pull it at the root. And so you've got to vet who comes into your life and tries to plant in your life, because at the end of the day, your life only has one set of roots, and we make sure that those roots are very taut and very strong with people and persons like yourselves and the industry around it.
Well, this has been an exceptional interview. If there's anything else, how can people find out more about the U.S. Veterans Hall of Fame? And in what ways can we support your work and your efforts when it comes to what you do to provide financial literacy to vets? Give us the details on how we can connect.
Sure. I mean, a simple Google search of the U.S. Veterans Hall of Fame, or I'll give it directly. You can go to our website, which is www.usvets, that's plural, halloffame.org.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Curtis Drafton, for being here today and being my guest on Mocha Money Monday. As always, this has been brought to you by the Phenomenal Hughes Global Network and our sponsors at the Wellsons Financial Group. We could not have had this experience without you, Mr. Curtis, today. So thank you for showing up and sharing your heart with our people. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to another Mocha Money Monday. We'll see you next time. Peace.